Chapter 611: Distractions and Magitech. The advisors needed a moment to take in the fact that Dominic had actually made a sorcerer's spellbook, the notoriously broken magical item, work. There were over a dozen of them floating around the region, mostly used to store unneeded spells for mages who had no intentions of spending months memorizing them and didn't need to ever cast them at more than level 1. That was the utility that everyone had understood the device to have, despite assertions that it could actually increase in level like any other Magitech device. So, what level do you cast spells at? Tryon asked. Only level 17 at the moment, but I'm working on it. As the level goes up, gaining a better attunement to the spellbook is a slow process, and I have too many responsibilities to be dumping thousands of levels of monster cores into it to force it up a level or two. Still, level 17, and you only need to put a spell gem into it and don't need to spend months memorizing a spell? That's a huge advantage, no matter how difficult it is to level up a Magitech item of that type. The advisor noted. That is a good point. Who knew that I was basically a mage all along? Dominic joked, while Amy rolled her eyes at him. How can you count as a mage when your favorite spell is create munitions? I don't think that any respectable maid would recognize that as a dignified magical combat style. In fact, even the artillery divisions have some concerns about your particular methods of deploying munitions. She reminded him. Minor details. Now, we've burned plenty of daylight making these two items, so it should be safe enough for us to go back in. Tryon shook her head. Give it another 15 or 20 minutes. They're not ready for us yet. You'll know when they are. Dominic sighed. They're doing something that's going to annoy me, aren't they? The techno witch laughed. If you think that you're about to be annoyed, rest assured that you are about to be far from the most annoyed member of the household. Dave is not going to approve at all. Dominic wasn't sure what she was talking about until a few minutes later, when Dave stuck his head inside with a pained look. Make them fix it, the big troll insisted. Fix what? They broke the barracks. Your barracks? Why would they mess with the manor guard's home? Dave shook his head. The other one made for little people. The new one is ugly, and it's not even proper stone. It doesn't match anything. Dominic stepped outside and looked toward the wall, then came back in. You are wrong. Dave will not be the most upset. They're building a 15-meter-tall building next to a 10-meter-tall wall. Alexis is going to rage. Not only that, but the new building was being erected with magic in the style of the capital's barracks buildings from the Royal District. That meant white marble and sandstone, while the rest of the compound was made of fieldstone or dark lacquered wood. It stood out like a sore thumb and didn't fit the theme at all. It was also huge, far larger than the building that it was replacing, and Dominic could feel the waves of magic being used to create it, suggesting that it was far more than a simple barracks building. Then, the magic shifted, coming closer, and Dave crossed his arms in annoyance. They're linking it to the underground tunnels, aren't they? The troll nodded. They are. Boss Lady is there now, and she looks mad. She should be able to make them fix it. Dominic shook his head. No, they're going to ask something stupid, like for us to make the walls taller because they built their barracks the wrong size. Tryon laughed. I don't think that it's going to be a barracks building. There will likely be soldiers stationed there, but not because it's a barracks. I believe that they decided that the protection of the new Banking Alliance headquarters is going to be the personal responsibility of the duchy, and they've decided to build the building in your manor compound. Dominic opened his mouth to snap back, then paused. Ah, you have realized it. You're the Duke, but the king is here. Once he puts his mind to it, his nobles have to fall in line. Fortunately, the building is near the front of the compound, so guests visiting for the bank don't have to pass the house, only the front gates. I have a pretty good idea of what spells they're using. It's a witch thing, and they're going all out on the privacy and protection. If my guess is right, they won't make you host the Banking Alliance members. They'll stay in that new building. Dominic smiled. Then this is an opportunity. I can work out a way to make them host the nobles who come to visit them. No need to keep preparing rooms for them. I can just host them for meals. The advisors laughed. That, good sir, is wishful thinking at its finest. Well, it was worth trying. We should go out there and see exactly what sort of monstrosity they're erecting in my yard. The advisors looked horrified as they moved between him and the door. I think that it's better if you wait until they're done before you go over. Tryon suggested. It's not like I'm going to stop them, Dominic noted. Your eyes are glowing gold. If I'm not wrong, I suspect that your draconic nature feels that someone invaded your territory, and you'll terrify the workers if you go over there right now. Tryon explained. Someone did invade my territory. Though I suppose in a way it is the king's territory too. But I see your point. Or, instead of letting them finish, I could go scare them now and make sure that they behave in the future. The old witch laughed, while the others looked like they were reconsidering the life choices that led them to accept this task of distracting Dominic while the details were finalized. Chapter 6:12. Distinct Style. And how would you go about terrifying them? You can't attack the royal infrastructure team in front of the king. Tryon reminded him. Dominic winked at her, then shrugged his shirt over his head. With a pulse of magic and a moment's focus, claws extended from his hands and wings from his back, while the light from his eyes flooded the room to the point that he could actually see the change in the light color. Well, that is certainly one way to terrify them enough that they never want to cross you again. Tryon laughed, while the other advisors made protective gestures in front of themselves. Dominic retracted the draconic features and put his shirt back on, while Tryon seemed to be contemplating something important. You know, you could have your shirts made with a flap in the back, so it would open over your wings if you extended them. I take it that you don't usually transform for better mobility. Dominic shrugged. Usually it's involuntary. I haven't actually tested the wings much. Most of the time when they extend, I'm sleeping. The witch's laugh made it clear that she knew why his wings were extending in his sleep. He was guarding his treasures unconsciously, and someone had gotten too close to either his belongings or his wife. The Dragon King had been the same way. He got all growly when someone got too friendly with his beloved. All right, keep your wings away, and we can go see how they're doing. The princess surely has already given them an earful about the entire situation and failed to change their minds about either the design or the location. Tryon finally relented. The others stepped aside with a relieved sigh, and Dominic shrugged. I suspect that everyone but Tryon was voluntold to be here. If I actually wanted to leave, she is the only one who could have stopped me from simply jumping out the window. The men looked shocked. They hadn't even considered that. I've got a physical enhancement and a monstrous strength spell gem in my spellbook. At level 17, that's nearly 3 times a human's base strength added from the spells. If I wanted to, I could jump through the window, over your heads. It's open for ventilation. The advisors looked a bit embarrassed. It's easy to forget that Magitech and spell gems make superhuman feats of strength a relatively common accomplishment. It's not like anyone actually keeps the spells active all the time. It would just be annoying most of the time, but I'd use it when I need to run somewhere. Not that I have to do that as often anymore, now that I've got a good mechanical horse of my own. Oh, that reminds me, how is the arena coming? Dominic shrugged. I have no idea. Ask the team to work on it, but I haven't been out to check on them. Give it a day or two, and they should have the arena ready. He kept walking as they talked, and found that the kings were all in front of the new building, with Alexis and the princes standing behind them. The royals mostly looked very proud of themselves, while Alexis and Prince Alex both looked annoyed. They were the two with the most military experience in the field, and not on a defensive front, as was the case with Crown Prince Claudius. From a defensive standpoint, the Crown Prince was not happy with the design, but the manor could be upgraded to compensate. But from an offensive standpoint, that building was too close to the walls and too high. Even if they raised the walls, an infiltrator or magical attack that set blaze to the new building would force a section of the wall to be abandoned, and that was a massive security breach. Fortunately for Dominic, they hadn't built anything near the manor walls. If they needed to expand and improve the defenses, they could simply build an outer perimeter wall away from the existing compound, and make that the primary defensive position for the guards. If the existing wall was a fallback position, it was less of an issue for security, as the structure could be scuttled when the outer wall was breached, instead of being a defensive flaw during the initial assault. That was a new project for Dave, Dominic decided. Letting the trolls make the decision on the new outer wall would also give them a chance to make little changes like giving the goats extra grazing grounds in between the walls. Dave always wanted more goats. It would be good for the manor's food supply, and in an emergency, they could use the gap between the walls to house townspeople. It might not be as sturdy as the existing wall, where the lower levels had earthworks behind them to prevent ramming attempts. But it would be solid enough for most situations. Dominic made his way to the new building, which was marked as the Six Nations Financial Alliance and Embassy. Embassy? Dominic asked. After a rather impassioned speech by the younger generation, we decided that it would be more appropriate for the ambassadors to be moved from the guest quarters of the manor into their own home on the grounds. Staying in the manor itself might give the impression of collusion and not protection. That simply wouldn't do, so they will stay here. The building will also house the vault, the guards for the ambassadors, and their guests during their time in Westover. Of course, that won't mean you're excluded from hosting duties. I am certain that most of the visitors will be eager to meet with the Duke and Duchess of Westover. The king explained. Then, Dominic noticed that there were far more people here than he remembered. Someone had called for yet another construction team, specifically to erect this building. The team included a few powerful mages, as well as the usual engineers and workers. That was needed for the construction of the defensive magical arrays, which would have been made by the sect leader if this was a mage tower. Could it not have been made to match? Dominic asked helplessly. That was suggested. However, after consultation, it was decided not to use the local style, so that the embassy building was clearly distinct from the manor itself. It will be an adjustment, I am certain. However, the building will be fully funded and staffed by the Alliance members, without draining the resources of the duchy. That was not the reason for Dominic's objection. Chapter 613. Hectic morning. The next day, everything seemed to happen all at once. The soldiers of the regiment were redeployed first thing in the morning and immediately began work with the infrastructure team who had been brought for the bank building, constructing barracks, and a training ground near the airship docks. Then, news came that the arena was ready, and then that the first 10 mechanical horses had been renovated enough that they were ready to work or be used for the demonstration just in the tournament. Then, guests began to arrive. Knights and noble-born military officers from all 6 nations of the Alliance arrived with entries for the joust that Dominic had no idea had even been sent out. Fortunately, there was room in the manor's secondary buildings for them to stay now that the vast majority of the debutantes were married and gone. But that was just the start of the chaos. The next group of refugees were coming in from the Kynwyn side, and Dominic hadn't planned for where to put them yet. This should be the last major group of them. The rest of the moving groups had found somewhere to settle down, mostly in regions that were only minimally monitored by the nobles that the king had sent to govern the region after the takeover. That was going to lead to issues later, Dominic knew. But that wasn't. No, that actually was his problem too. He was the governor of Stantia province now, so he was going to have to talk to the nobles about making sure that the villages didn't turn to banditry or isolationism. If they wanted to be rural and mostly free of oversight, Dominic could understand it. But the region couldn't afford to have whole villages of bandits and criminals making travel dangerous through the province. So, he would have to make time to meet with the nobles during the tournament. Fortunately, everyone was going to be in Westover for the event, so he would only have to make time to speak with them, and he wouldn't have to travel or send invitations and portals to get them all to him. Dominic sighed as he looked at the pile of paperwork on his desk and added the note to his list of issues. Dave, send a couple of the others and some mages from the Duskblade sect to greet the refugees. Lead them to the staging area and have the mages help them find suitable locations to settle. There should still be enough suitable farmhouses, and with the extra teams, we've been getting ahead on the city construction. The Larry Trolls of the Sands sect are very good city builders. Dave smiled as if he had been complimented personally. I will make sure that they find good spots. The Trolls have a whole big plan for new buildings in the city. The engineer made sure of it. They can find homes quickly. Dave was especially enthusiastic today, and it was making Dominic suspicious. Did something good happen that I don't know about yet? The last of the dating girls moved out. It's just new visitors now. That means we finished the event, right? Dave asked. It does. Dominic replied carefully, not understanding why Dave was excited. Then we get to celebrate finishing our task. We did good, nobody died, and most of them even found husbands. Only a few left with the airships. That means celebration soup. Now Dominic understood why Dave was excited. All right, I will tell the staff to make sure that you have everything you need to get the celebration ready for the whole team. There was a maid standing by the door, and she nodded silently at a look from Dominic. Keeping the trolls happy was easy. All they would have to do today was give them a bit more than they asked for, and the trolls would think it was the best day ever. They were unlikely to remember that it was the same thing that was done the last time that there was a celebration, only that it was better than usual. Now, have we missed any of the important parts? Dave nodded. There is one more girl coming to see you. A short sister. Dominic frowned. That could mean nearly anyone under 180 centimeters tall by Dave's estimation. But the commotion in the hallway let him know that it was someone both young and familiar. Princess Eleanor. Dominic. Tell the trolls to let me in. She called from the other side of the door. The maid opened the door, and Dominic saw the princess dangling just off the ground, with Dave's hand around her middle as he stopped her from barging past him. You can let her go, and straighten her dress. This is Alexis' little sister Eleanor. The trolls all smiled. She's feisty like the princess. She's also a princess, the youngest one. Dave looked suspicious. She isn't wearing armor. Eleanor giggled. I see why you like them. Hello, Mr. Dave. My name is Eleanor. I do like armor, but today is for formal meetings, so I had to wear a pretty dress instead. There are rules for what princesses wear. Dave gasped in horror. That is no good. Do they at least write them down? They do. In fact, there are many books full of rules. Dave strongly suspected that she was lying to him, but she was the boss lady's little sister, so he wouldn't say it. He had always wanted a little sister, but only got brothers. 50 brothers in total. Princess, welcome to Westover. Have you come for the tournament? Or are you here for another engagement? Dominic asked. For the jousting tournament. Father called me to attend, as the young princes of the other nations will be in attendance. And that meant chances to arrange a marriage alliance for her. How early in the morning was too early to be drinking in front of company? It was at least 4 hours past sunup. That had to be long enough, right? Chapter 614. Eleanor arrives. Liz, the scullery maid who was normally in the kitchen cleaning, brought them snacks a few seconds later. She must have been dispatched before Dominic even let Eleanor into his office, as she was too quick to have been summoned afterward. Liz, thank you. How are things going downstairs? The junior maid gave him a faint smile. As well as can be expected. We've had to replace a few staff members. Not all of the extras that we hired for the event worked out. But Beth doesn't allow any nonsense, and it's still a good place to work. That is wonderful news. The right coworkers are essential to keeping things running smoothly, and the kitchen is the most important part of the house. I'm certain that Dave would agree. We're certainly one of the busiest, though the housekeepers are not slacking at all with so many royal guests on site. Even if they brought their own staff with them, there is still a lot of cleaning and maintenance work for us to do. Now, I simply must get back to work. We're short-handed after the weddings, and we've got an influx of royal guests. Princess Eleanor laughed as the maid scurried away. Clearly the girl had no idea who she was and had gotten used to all sorts of random women being around the house who were not anyone important enough for her to hold back in her conversation with Dominic. Your people sound fun. There aren't a lot of the palace staff that are so easygoing, but even your manor guards know how to make life interesting. Dominic laughed, remembering that Dave had simply picked her up to avoid having to deal with her attempts to sneak past him. We have collected a pretty good bunch of people, for certain. But is there a particular reason that you escaped from your brother's attention? I know how they are about protecting their little sisters, so it can't have been easy to get away without anyone seeing you. Eleanor held up the amulet around her neck. It's a protection spell from my first brother, but it's also a tracking spell. It's not that they've let me escape, but that they know where I am, and they don't know that my assigned bodyguards aren't with me. The veiled maid smirked behind her face covering, and Dominic saw her eyes dart to the hallway. The youngest princess's guards must be in the hall, making themselves unobtrusive, as the office was small, and Dave was on guard at the door. With the troll there, her security was assured. Plus, the door was open. Well, we can always have a snack before lunch and catch up. How have your classes been going? I heard that you've finally been able to return to school instead of being cooped up at home. Princess Eleanor nodded eagerly. Not only that, but they've also given us permission to go outside of the city for training again. You have no idea how awful it was to be stuck inside the palace for an entire war. I couldn't even go out and hunt goblins to train my skills because everyone was too worried about spies and traitors. So, I just sat with the tutors and learned theory instead of actually doing anything. Sounds awful. The princess giggled, reminding Dominic of just how young she was. Despite being trained her whole life for responsibility, she was still barely 14 years old. She had a few years of basic schooling left in front of her before being thrown directly into the political waters of an arranged marriage. There might be a lot of competition for noble husbands, but that hardly applied to a princess of the direct lineage, and even less to her father's clear favorite. It really was. But it's good to be here. I haven't gotten to see my sister yet, but the castellan led us around the property before taking me to my father, and I can see that she put a lot of work into the design. Oh, why do you say it was her and not me? Do you have the sort of military training that tells you to build earthworks behind the wall so that the first 5 meters of height are impervious to ramming attacks and cannon fire? Or perhaps a hidden mastery of crop dynamics to build a sustainable agriculture system within the grounds? Hey, that one was actually Dave and our garden witch, working with Chef Beth. Still, it's incredible. I've been learning so many things from the royal paladins since the twins both got married. Oh, what a scandal that was, with Thorvald stealing a marriage arrangement. But they seem to be getting along well. Hopefully, the King of Kyria will allow Thorvald to come to the tournament, so I can see Josephine again. It's been too long since any of my sisters got to come back to the palace and visit. Dominic nodded and placed a few of the small sweets on a plate for her. Such is the sacrifice of being married. At least for a princess. I don't think that Alexis is too upset about having to move to Westover, though. She's been settling in quite well, and she's making a whole new group of friends. Dominic joked. Oh, I didn't know that there were other noble ladies living in the manor. Well, there have been some, as we just finished hosting a debutante event. But I actually meant that she has started training new paladins for the duchy. Oh, real friends. That is wonderful. Do you think that I could get to meet one of them before I have to leave? Are there girls in her new paladin order? Indeed there are. And I'm certain you can meet them later. Just ask your sister when you two are in private. Princess Eleanor was practically vibrating with excitement, while the veiled maid was doing her best not to laugh. One of the paladins that the young princess was looking for was standing right beside her, wearing servant clothing. It was the perfect disguise, the maid realized. Even though they had been worried that they were carrying themselves like trained soldiers, that confident stride and trained reflexes were only making everyone think that they were elite royal staff members. Chapter 6:15. Welcome the Knights. The sound of urgent footsteps in the hallway stopped at the door, and Prince Claudius walked in with a scowl on his face. So, this is where you've been hiding. Do you know how long we've been looking for you, Princess? He demanded. I was just visiting with my brother-in-law for a few minutes. The staff even brought us snacks. Surely you could have just asked them? Truthfully, he had only been looking for her for half a minute and had heard her voice from down the hall. But he didn't want to admit that. Come. Father wants to see you, and we have much to catch up on. My apologies, Duke Dominic, but I simply must borrow my little sister for a moment. Of course. I should finish my paperwork. Enjoy your conversation, Your Highness. Dominic barely managed to keep a straight face at the petulant look on Eleanor's face, but her father had called for her, and that wasn't something that she could ignore. But she knew as well as Dominic that her oldest brother was just jealous that someone else got to spend time with his sisters. They all ignored him after they went away and got married, and most of his brothers were either dreadfully dull or after his position as crown prince. Hardly relaxing partners for conversation. Your Grace, it's time to go greet the knights from the other realms who have arrived for the tournament. The venue is ready, and they have set their tents around it, as is the custom for a joust. All that is left is for you to do the formal welcoming of the nobility into your territory and confirm that the events will be starting in 2 days. The veiled maid reminded him. Got it. Let's head out. Dave, can you have someone get the horse ready? +1 for our lovely assistant. Dave nodded, and Dominic gladly placed a paperweight on a stack of documents to review, then rose to head for the door. Greeting the knights who had come for the tournament was an essential part of his duty, and delaying any longer would just be rude as a host. In fact, he likely should have arranged for them to meet him before everyone arrived, but they had all been brought so close together that it simply wasn't feasible to greet them all individually. The arena area had changed dramatically from what Dominic remembered only a few days earlier. Not only was there a massive stone stadium designed to have a huge crowd watching the events, but there were nearly 100 large and colorful tents set outside by the knights, a small market with food and other vendors, and a secondary crowd area for locals who wanted to watch the festivities before and after the event. It almost felt like a fair or a carnival, but with most of the conversation revolving around what the locals had heard about the various nobles who would be competing. The knights had brought squires with them, men who had spread the word of their lord's deeds and accomplishments among the locals. That was an essential part of the event. You needed to get a solid fan base to keep up morale, but it also affected the betting pool. Naturally, most of the knights would be betting on themselves to win, but if the odds took too big of a swing, it would mess up the bets should they happen to end up in second or third. There was a whole tournament circuit that the knights participated in, and a complex betting system based on how they were ranked before and after, as well as how they actually performed during this event. Most of the justs weren't a set location and date every year, unless they were one of the holiday events. Mostly, they were up to whatever noble had the money to host one, and the political influence to convince top juicers to show up. Neither was an issue for Dominic. Not because of himself, though he would have gotten many of the closer knights to come. But when you had 6 kings in your manor, even the flimsiest of excuses was enough to get noblemen to come see you. The first few noblemen came over as soon as Dominic stopped his horse, while Dave helped the veiled maid dismount. The arrival of the local duke meant that things were getting closer to started, and that was excellent news. Dominic also realized that he didn't need to have worried about the horses for the event. The only ones who would need them might be any of his local knights who wanted to join, but who had just left the military. The others traveled with their mechanical horse as part of their equipment, and they were currently being checked and polished by the squires. That was part of what had drawn the local crowd here to watch, and Dominic could see why. It was an amazing spectacle, both a show of wealth and military might, but also noble pride, and some of the top juicers had their own fandoms among the locals. That was often not the case, but the people of Westover were all newly arrived from other regions, and some of these men were familiar faces to them from past events. Gentlemen, welcome to Westover. I can see that everyone is quite excited for the event to start, so I won't give you some long-winded speech. Just the basics. First, it is true that the kings are here, and most do intend to attend the event. It is possible that you may meet one or more of them on any given day of the tournament. If possible, have your squires be prepared for anything you might need to change for a casual meeting. The event will begin the day after tomorrow, to give the last of the knights time to arrive and get set up. You surely already knew that, I just wanted to make it official. If you have business with anyone staying within the manor grounds, inform the gate guards, and they will make the arrangements. I'm looking forward to seeing you all in action. Chapter 6:16 Knights Errant. A few of the nearby knights thumped armored fists on their chest plates, greeting Dominic with a military salute as he finished his speech. But most of them were more interested in coming over to speak with him directly. Duke Dominic, it's an honor to meet you. I am Charles Whitberry, Knight of the Cloth, hailing from Signia City. This is a wonderful arena that you have set up here. Was this always present? I don't recall Westover ever being on the tournament circuit. Sir Charles was a tall blonde knight, looking every bit the part of the noble jousting champion with his strong chin, sharp jaw, and slightly weathered features, showing the mark of having spent decades on the road chasing tournament money for a living. It was a respectable enough pursuit for a Knight of the Cloth, a knight who held a title but no lands. Welcome to Westover. No, there was no jousting arena here until now. In the past, Westover was more of a quiet border retreat for when the members of the Earl's family wanted some seclusion and privacy. Eventually, it became his full-time home, but even then, there weren't more than a few thousand people in town. Nearly everything you see in the city now has been built in the last year to accommodate the massive influx of people who have arrived. The knight nodded at Dominic's words and pulled over a dark-haired knight. I would like you to meet Sir Nalin of Shersdonia. Generally considered a quiet sort, he's the favorite to win today. He's been on a hot streak all season, with 3 wins in 5 tournaments. That sort of record is difficult to argue with, and as you can see, he's still a young man. The other knight looked vaguely annoyed, but nodded politely at Dominic, the not-quite bow that foreign knights would use to show respect to a higher noble without anyone questioning their loyalty to their home nation. It's not that I'm quiet, Your Grace. It's that Sir Charles is quite loud. His record speaks for itself, over 50 wins in 20 years, and he has one of the largest merchandise operations of any of the knights-errant. I'm quite certain that you will see his flags and possibly even shirts in the crowd when the event starts. The advantages of having grown up in the capital, I suppose. Dominic joked. Indeed. You should meet Sir Morton of Bostoveria as well. His chances of taking the prize this time are not small. Sir Charles added. He called over a younger blonde knight, who looked quite excited to meet Dominic. Duke Dominic, it's a pleasure to meet you. I have heard much about your work here, and your contributions to Signia. Really? Bostoveria is some distance from Signia. I hadn't expected that the word had spread that far. The knight laughed and shook his head. I'm from Bostoveria. But like these others, I am a knight-errant, chasing the tournament circuit and glory. The knights of the Signian nobility have been spreading all sorts of interesting tales lately, especially about the monster siege of Signia City. I was there for a joust only days ago, and your name is still on everyone's lips. That sounded like flattery to Dominic, but the other knights were all in agreement. The Duke of Westover was something of a legend among the soldiers and knights of Signia City. They told tales of him rescuing not just 1 but 2 princesses from danger, of him sending out uncommon grade spears by the 100 for the common soldiers on the line, and of how he went from a weapons forge smith to a royal advisor to a duke in the course of one war. It was the ultimate rags to riches story for every soldier with a bit of noble blood to qualify them for the title. Seeing him in person made it clear just what sort of noble blood Dominic had. There wouldn't be any noblemen except from wavemates who would be acknowledged with a pair of golden horns on their head. Still, they said he was from Stantia province, and now that land was part of Signia. He had fought for his home, and done it on behalf of the king of Signia, so it was oddly fitting that his new title let him govern the province that he was born in. It seems that we have a rather impressive turnout today. I have only had the opportunity to see a few tournaments in my day, but neither exceeded a dozen contestants. Dominic informed them, which made the knights laugh. The small-town secondary circuits. They might not pay well, but they're always fun to watch. That's an argument that many have made against the formal circuit many times. You see, when everyone is a trained professional and everyone knows everyone, there is a chance that the fighting spirit can be lost. It begins to feel like a formal ritual and not nearly enough like an actual battle. Sir Charles explained. Dominic laughed. Well, in that case, perhaps I will have to add a little something special to the prize pool. Sir Nalin smiled at him. I wouldn't object. 500 Signian gold crowns is a mighty fine prize already, but it's the little keepsakes that make the memories. Sir Morton rolled his eyes. You say that as if you've already won. I won't be letting you off so easily when there are 500 crowns on the line. More of the knights came over as they heard the verbal sparring match. Duke Dominic, don't let them fool you. They're not so far ahead of us in skill as they believe. Just wait and see once the roster is announced. They might not even make it through the round robin. One of the young men insisted. Sir Charles laughed at the young knight's confidence. We will see about that. I haven't been knocked out in the first round in many years, and I'm not about to start now. Chapter 617. At the arena grounds. Once they saw that the Duke was not in a hurry to leave the area, as many were after a formal announcement like this, more of the knights came over to say hello. Your arena grounds are amazing. Whoever thought of setting up a portable privy every 50 paces is an absolute genius. One of the knights joked. Dominic chuckled. You know, that started out as a joke that we would need it for the crowds when we held festivals at the new arena, but I see that someone made it a reality. There are even factory names on them. The knight nodded. Indeed, a testament to the magical engineering of the duchy. Many of us will be taking the opportunity to explore the city later this evening. We have been informed by the locals that most businesses are open late and that there are streetlights to keep evening travel safe. That would be quite the change from many of the cities we have visited. Dominic laughed. Well, I can't guarantee complete safety. But we do have guards on patrol all night, and there isn't an entrenched criminal population here. Being a new city, we might have unsavory sorts, but they haven't had time to settle in or to make an area their own. With so much population churn after the barons moved into their new estates, it made their lives rather difficult, and most are not afraid to report troublemakers to the sheriff. I will admit, at some points in my past, that would have been an issue for me personally. Dragonkin aren't always welcome. However, the population here is pretty tolerant, as long as you're not causing issues. He added the last bit after noticing a few of the knights had slightly inhuman features, most likely the reason that they were not successors to any title and had chosen to be roaming knights living on tournament revenue and mercenary contracts from the Adventurers Guild. It wasn't a requirement that they were members, but most of the knights would be members of the Adventurers Guild. It simply made sense for them to build their reputation taking side jobs. With a strong reputation and a higher-ranked membership in the guild, they would find that prices for everything dropped when they entered a new city, and they would be much less likely to be chased off by the locals. Foreign noblemen were always suspicious. Foreign mercenaries with the Adventurers Guild were less so. You will enjoy the city, I am certain. We can repair anything that you need, as we have masters for everything from magitech engineering to carriage making, tools, and furniture. You have a master toolmaker?
Sir Charles asked.
Pops, formerly of the Commoner Gate Forge in Signia City, is operating a toolmaker's forge here in Westover now. The shop in the capital has been passed on to one of his younger relatives. The Signian knight smiled. Well, I know where I'm stopping first. He keeps everything you could need for camping and daily supplies in stock, and I could use a few new enameled metal plates. The last ones he sold me lasted over a decade, but now the enamel is beginning to wear thin and chip. Dominic laughed. You know you're supposed to maintain those, right? The enamel doesn't last forever if you're beating it up daily. Sir Charles shrugged. I could have had them patched, but I just never got around to it. Besides, I could use a few spares. Sir Morton nodded. He's a bit famous for only owning 2 plates and 2 bowls. It's been the same pair since I was a small child watching my father from the arming tent. The older knight simply shrugged. They are good ones. What can I say? The knights began to break off into groups, making plans to explore the city and then to set watch with their squires for the overnight. You could never be too cautious before a tournament. Whether it was curious civilians messing with gear, deliberate sabotage, or even just an accident, you needed someone awake to ensure that everything was ready to go first thing in the morning. I will assign a few of the trolls from the Manor Guard to patrol the Knight's Rest area tonight. They're excellent security, even in the darkest night. Dominic offered. Don't trolls have horrible night sight? Sir Nalin asked. They do, but they don't need it. They have excellent hearing and an even better sense of smell. But most importantly, these are mountain trolls, and you're camped on a thin layer of soil over solid rock. They can detect the movement of everyone within the camp area, and if anyone is acting suspiciously, they will most likely notice. They might question your squires if they've forgotten where they belong, but the overall safety will be much better than just having a few city guards patrol the area. Any thief who couldn't escape a basic town guard patrol was never going to make it far in their trade, so while the guards would help keep people honest, they didn't have any real effect on the sorts of threats that the knights were actually concerned about. We would appreciate it. The trolls look plenty capable, and if it comes to a fight, I reckon that they will be able to break it up much more easily than any common guardsman. One of the men joked. Indeed, Dave excels at breaking up fights. Dave's eager nod assured the knights that there would be no way for those caught by the trolls to get away with causing trouble. The only question that they had left was who thought that it was a brilliant idea to put mountain trolls in full-plate armor and give them shields? Wasn't that just overkill? A brilliant level of overkill, but still, entirely unnecessary. You could give them a fire resistance amulet and get very nearly the same outcome. The armor was mostly decorative when the trolls regenerated so fast. but Dominic saw it another way. It was better that Dave didn't get injured at all. They might heal quickly, but the cuts still hurt. Chapter 6:18 Fine Design. As the knights began to disperse to plan for their evening activities, Dominic found a chance to explore the area himself and take a quick look at the arena venue before the tournament started. He had left the design stage entirely to others, so he had no idea what it actually looked like inside, only what he could see from the outside. The knights were right about the whole area being set up like a large fairground, and the closer Dominic got to the building, the more vendors and other shops he found set up for the event. They even had merchandise shops from some of the knights already in place, selling small pennants for the crowd to wave when their favorite came on the field. It was quite impressive, given the short time that they had to get everything in place, and a testament to the innovation of the locals. Not only had they managed to create a functional market around the arena, they had already begun altering their sales to match what the people wanted. A shop that had been selling sweets had turned their sign around and was now selling meat buns and pierogies. Though they hadn't erased the old sign, so perhaps that was part of the plan all along. Sell sweets during the day and savory snacks in the evening, when everyone was actually hungry and more sugar was only likely to give them a stomach ache. Dominic stopped to grab an egg bun from one of the stalls and a coffee from another. It might not be a healthy meal, but it was tasty, and he had a lot of day left, so there was no harm in a coffee or two. At the doors to the arena, the hired guards stepped aside to let him through, which caused a brief moment of chaos as others who hadn't seen who had been allowed in tried to follow him. The grounds were set up with precisely trimmed turf over sandy loam, giving good grip, but a soft enough surface that a knight landing on it wouldn't be seriously injured by the impact.
Most of the time.
Fortunately, they had healers ready, as well as alchemy potions, and the score was actually much lower in injuries than Dominic had first expected. The knights were professionals, and they had taken hundreds of similar strikes over the years. They knew how to take the hit properly, and how to fall to minimize damage. Their armor was also designed to protect their neck in the event that they took a bad tumble from their horse and landed headfirst. The design would limit the crushing force, as well as the lateral movement of the head, transferring most of the impact to the shoulders. It was only a small change compared to what had already been designed for use against blunt weapons, but it was an important one. The seating was standard for a stadium or amphitheater, with rows of benches circling the field, each higher than the one in front of it, so everyone could see. The only real upgrade that had been made was that there were extendable sunshades at the top, which could be pulled out to put most of the crowd out of the direct sun. Or rain, Dominic supposed. They wouldn't cover the best of the seats, but everyone in the upper half should be relatively sheltered from the elements. Jousting matches typically didn't stop just because it was raining, and the spectators would compensate for it if they didn't want to get wet. But if it was likely to rain, most of them would bring a long jacket or a canvas tarp to use as shelter while they watched. "Your Grace, is it to your liking?" One of the team members from the infrastructure group asked as Dominic stood by the entrance to the stadium floor, admiring the design. "Indeed. It looks like you thought of everything and included the best elements from arenas all over." The man nodded. "We've also got an area barrier built into the security room so that the whole roof can be sheltered from the rain. It will need a mage to keep it up, so it's not necessary to activate it all the time. But if it starts raining too hard during an event, we can shelter the spectators and continue the show. Hopefully, that will reduce the number of delays during future functions. Too many times, we've run into cases where things were running a week or more behind schedule simply because of the weather. Now, Westover is expected to get a lot of rain this season, and we can't have every event being delayed. I knew that I was right to leave it to your team. That is exactly what we needed. And I see that you even built lighting into the stadium, so events can run well into the evening hours." The worker smiled. That was at the insistence of engineer Marcos. When he was in school, he was on a date at a cricket match, and they called it on account of poor light just as he was about to get somewhere. He's still not forgiven shoddy stadium design for that night. "Have you gotten to speak with Lord Blackwell yet? He's the infrastructure advisor appointed by the king, and I know that he has some larger-scale ideas for the region." The worker sighed, then nodded. "Yeah, we spoke with him last night. He's definitely got ideas for the region, and some of them are going to take much more than what our team is capable of. I know that the king sent more teams here for the adjustment period, with the envoy settling in, but they'd better hang around long enough to take on the roadwork projects that advisor wants done. A road between here and the main highway at Limsbury isn't a small undertaking, no matter how much magic the team has. The new roadwork machines will make it possible to do in a year, but that's about it. Asking any more of them is pushing your luck. Chapter 619, The Road Less Traveled. They intend to build the road to Limsbury, not Castle City, first? Dominic asked. That's right. They seem to believe that having a road directly here from Castle City and region would cause a migration issue out of Old Signia if we built it this year. So they want the road to Limsbury done first, and then we can sort out who wanted to live where. Most of the ones who are wanting to leave Limsbury have already done it over the last decade, so they're not expecting a large movement, only increased trade. 1 more year to get back on its feet is what they think Castle City needs. 1 year of supplies sent from our farms will be a huge economic boon to Westover as well. You know how hard it can be to ship food long distances, even with the new airships. But right now, we've got the market for it, and we've got so many new farmers to grow food that will be drowning in it by year's end. Dominic nodded slowly. That makes a lot of sense. But it also brings up another issue that I need to address. We need potato barns and grain silos with proper airflow. Do you know the ones that I mean? There used to be some here, but the army smashed them when they looted the crops. The infrastructure team member laughed. Oh, we're well aware. We've been trying to find the design of the originals because they smashed them right to the ground. There was a lot of rage behind that action, so I don't know if they were empty or full when the place was invaded the first time.
Chock full.
It was right after harvest season. But Dagos hadn't sent nearly enough with their armies, other than the rations. From what we heard, the big cities got a lot of rage as well. The Dagos armies were all commoners who were kept on the verge of starvation with punishing taxes, while the Dragon King took a set amount every year and managed to extend his wealth somehow. So, they all had it better than the army that was invading them, and that made the Dagos soldiers nearly as mad as the nobles who ruled over them. Oh, I have the designs at the manor. Come over later or send someone, and I will grab them for you. Or ask Julio. He knows the ones, they're vented, to keep airflow through the stored grain. But you can work on the potato barns yourself. They just need to be below ground to keep the temperature regulated. That's much less stressful than trying to keep grain dry and stable for years in case of drought. The man's smile gave Dominic a glimpse into the grand plans that they had for the city's infrastructure. If they could build those everywhere and a few more wine cellars at the barony manors who had good hills for the purpose, they could stockpile nearly everything that the barony needed to make it through a few lean years, while still keeping up their shipments for cash. There was some talk of adding irrigation as well. I know that much of the duchy already has irrigation canals installed, but some of the barons have expressed a desire to add Magitech water pumps and an irrigation pivot. With them, they can keep perfect water levels in the dry season, and they can do it with a dugout pond that fills naturally during the wet season. Or with water magic if we're in hard times. After seeing everything that has happened to the region, and talking to the new arrivals from the deserts of Axbridge, caution is the mood of the day, and the barons all want to prepare for the absolute worst-case scenario. Dominic considered that information for a moment before answering. Well, they're not wrong to want to take precautions. But even in good years, the extra irrigation will help keep crops growing at optimal rates. One other thing that we're going to need are some more beekeepers. The wild bee population likely does the job, but if we can get a few beekeepers to spread around between the baronies, they will make some good money, and we will have the security. Besides, while butterflies and ladybugs might do the job, it's more efficient to have bees, and we get honey as a side product. That alone is totally worth it. The lovely ladies of the bakery will thank us. True, we have some sugar beets, but that needs refining, and it's just not the same as using honey in your baking. Alright, I will send out a message requesting beekeepers with a hive. I don't know how much we can get, but if I put it up on the board, we might find someone hiding in town with the skills. If they find a wild nest and move it, they can start up their business from nothing but a few boxes. Well, it sounds like I've got plenty to do and designs to modernize. At least a little. The original grain silos were amazingly effective from what I have heard, but with a bit of magitech to add forced air on calm days, we could do it even better. Airflow and low humidity is the key to keeping grain stable. Or having a witch around who can cast a spell to prevent spoilage. But that's more effort to maintain, and not practical to do at every single barony. As long as we can get the original design, we can make something that will keep the pulse crops fresh. Just leave it to us. We will get it all sorted out and bill it to the nobles. They can afford the extra work if it's not considered to be a duchy improvement. Dominic laughed. It probably is, but it's also part of the Baron's duties to his people and to his own benefit to have as much ability to feed his people as possible. We might be under a tax relief period, but I'm certain that they will pay for the improvements to their land. Chapter 620. Honored Juicer. The infrastructure worker left, and Dominic returned to the gathering around the arena. Now that he was certain that it contained everything that they were going to need for the joust, there wasn't much to be concerned about, and he could focus on greeting the knights and the locals who had come out to see them. Dominic turned to the other side of the arena from where he had been exploring the first time, and found a large group of knights gathered around one tent. That looked like it might be a fun place to visit. To have that many knights gathered around his tent, he was either the life of the party, or someone highly respected. Either way, worth meeting. Dominic made his way over to the crowd, but didn't announce himself at first. It was better to wait and see what the situation was so that he could greet whoever had attracted this much attention properly. The initial chat was mostly about the upcoming tournament, and everyone arguing about how their odds were based on who had arrived already. Naturally, there was a lot of self-promotion and bragging going on, but it didn't take long before Dominic knew who was supposed to be in that tent. The third Prince of Mitfield, a royal family member senior enough that Dominic was surprised that he hadn't been invited to the events in the manor, had signed himself up for the tournament, and he had brought a small group of his personal attendants as well. They were the local equivalent of Signia's royal paladins, only they were all sons of higher-ranking titled nobles. It was a Mitfield tradition for sons to serve in the royal order before they took over from their fathers, so they were all minor celebrities that everyone wanted to get closer to before they took over their home territories and became unreachable for the lower noble sorts like the jousting tournament knights. The third prince's name was Damien, Dominic learned, and that was enough for him to come forward and greet him. Prince Damien, it's an honor to have you here today. Good luck in the tournament. Dominic greeted him. Duke Dominic, it's a pleasure to meet you. Forgive me for not joining you at the manor. Such events are dreadfully stuffy and not at all to my taste. Dominic laughed. Well, you could always spend time with advisor Trine of Shersdonia, or your Uncle George. The prince rolled his eyes. That's not the right type of entertaining either. It's better to be here among my peers on the tournament circuit. Let me introduce you to my escort. I have brought only 4 men today, all of whom will be entering the joust. These are Lars, Neil, Karath, and Nick. All of these fine gentlemen are sons of dukes and currently in line to inherit after they have served their time in the order. Lars and Karath both have border territories, so they will be frequent customers and visitors to Signia. Nick and Neil are from the southern reaches, but with the advancements in airship technologies, it might not be impossible that they are also going to be dealing with Westover in the near future. Dominic nodded and shook each of the men's hands as they were introduced. It's a pleasure to meet you all. Welcome to Westover. If you need anything, send a runner to the manor, and my men will make sure that we find it for you. Without disturbing the king's entourage. The knights patted him on the shoulder as he greeted them, and the prince laughed. At least you understand the hardships that come with formality. Showing up at the manor while the king is in attendance requires formal approvals, meetings, and paperwork to justify why I am in attendance, while both my senior brothers are as well. The hierarchy is not so flexible that they make it easy for a third son to try to get a leg up on the crown prince. Prince Damien explained. As I told the others, if there are issues with your gear or your mounts, we have specialists here to take care of them. Master craftsmen, no less. Damien nodded. I have heard. You have assembled quite the array of magic users here in Westover, and I have heard that you're still getting more. Dominic shook his head. Not so many more. Most of the ones who were on the move have already settled in the uninhabited regions of the province, and many of those are beyond the duchy itself. However, there is a chance that we might attract another mage tower or two. We've become a peak destination for them, and we've got a steady supply of the materials that they need for their work. It's the same for the techno-wizards. The abundance of mages who have transmutation and gem creation magic makes their lives so much easier. We are also teaching a new generation of them at the academies. Starting next semester, we will have 2 operational, with classes for techno-wizards, mages, nature witches, and many other small specialties. I haven't started the recruitment push yet, but if you happen to know some youngsters who might not have made the cut into a local academy but have the talent, they're welcome to enroll here. It was common for the children of knights, who were barely considered nobles to begin with, to have a hard time getting into an elite academy, and instead learn from a home tutor, followed by an apprenticeship in their chosen trade, or a stint in the military. I will keep it in mind. The top academies are always a challenge for the sons of untitled nobles, but the Midfield line does boast of many talented techno-wizards. It was the polite political answer, but the comment wasn't as much for the prince as it was for the knights who were listening in on their conversation. They were the ones who would be looking the hardest for a way to have their children do better than they did. The third prince already had a solid future for his own children as bureaucrats in the Midfield Palace.